The population of the United States of America is a phenomenal mix of people of different ethnic origins, whose predecessors have immigrated here from almost all continents and countries of the world. In this episode, we will explain who the peoples that made up the American nation were, when, and why these peoples came to the United States, and what their contribution to the consolidation and prosperity of America was. And at the end, we'll show you how you can easily find out who your distant ancestors were. We have designed this channel to regularly publish videos about the most important and interesting things that happen to us, people. So subscribe to our channel, and if you don't want to lose any videos, press the bell button. It will not be an overstatement to say that the greatest contribution to the consolidation of the United States was made by the English, given that until the proclamation of its independence in 1776, the United States was a British colony. Thus, 62% of the founding fathers of the United States were English, and 27 of the 45 American presidents were English as well. The first British colony with a stable population was founded in 1620 in Plymouth by the so-called Pilgrim Fathers, who came to America on the Mayflower ship in search of religious freedom. The history of Puritan pilgrims is central to American culture and history. It was namely Puritan pilgrims who introduced the Thanksgiving Day tradition to the U.S. In 1700, the English made up 80% of the population of the new colonies, but later this percentage began to decrease due to the arrival of immigrants from other ethnic groups. Today, only 7% of Americans have English origins, and this is not because the English would be endangered, but because most of them began attributing to themselves American origins. This is explained by the fact that English people in the USA have spent so much time in the US that they forgot or no longer see any value in their English descent. Speaking of the American ancestry, 6% of the US population state that they are of American origin. Scottish people represent 1.7% of the US population, and most of them immigrated to the American colonies in the 19th century in search of a better life. It may be striking, but Uncle Sam, the personification of the United States, represents a real person, a Scottish businessman from New York named Samuel Wilson. By the way, 16% of America's founding fathers were Scottish. The Irish represent another large group, with a 10% presence in the US population. Surprisingly, there are 8 times more Irish people in the US than in Ireland itself. Thus, nearly 40 million of Irish live in the US and only 5 million in Ireland. Most of them arrived in the USA in the 19th century, especially after 1840 to escape the Great Famine that killed 1 million people in Ireland. Interestingly, in the 19th century, the Irish community in the US was divided in 2 opposite camps, which hated each other to death. The Irish who immigrated before 1820 were Protestants, while the Irish who immigrated afterwards were mostly Catholic. In 1844 in Philadelphia, the conflict between Protestant and Catholic Irish escalated to the point where violent clashes led to the death of at least 20 people, and 13 Catholic churches were burned. In New York in 1870 and 1871, street battles between Catholic and Protestant Irish also broke out, with 60 people dead and another 240 injured. A few years earlier, in 1863, it was also Irish people in New York who provoked the so-called New York City draft riots against recruitment into the army during the Civil War. The revolt resulted in 120 deaths, 2,000 injured, and $100 million of damages, and was stopped only by the intervention of several thousand soldiers and artillery. The Irish Rebellion in New York, as well as their religious conflict, was pictured in an outstanding way in Martin Scorsese's movie Gangs of New York. About 4.5 million Americans have Dutch ancestry. New York was founded in 1624 by the Dutch, and in the past it was called New Amsterdam, after the name of the most important city in the Netherlands, Amsterdam. In 1674, the Netherlands ceded the city to the British, which renamed it New York. It is remarkable that Americans enjoy religious freedom due to the Dutch heritage, who were the first to introduce religious freedom in the American colonies. Theodore Roosevelt and some other US presidents also have Dutch roots. Today, Germans represent the largest ethnic group in the US, with 43 million of German people making up 13% of the country's population. Most Germans arrived here in the middle of the 19th century, being attracted by the fact that the US offered them a lot of land. The Germans were the first to create kindergartens in the US and introduced the Christmas tree tradition. They've brought as president Dwight Eisenhower as well as Donald Trump, who is German on his father's side. African Americans who gained their freedom only in 1865 represent almost 13% of the American population. It is estimated that in total, there were 10 million Africans from Central and Western Africa brought to the American colonies. In fact, these 10 million are just those who made it and stepped on the American continent, since another 10 million died on their way to America. Native Americans represent 1.6% of the total population, although 500 years ago, the percentage was 100. The biggest native group today is the Cherokee, counting 300,000 members. American natives represent the oldest population of the U.S. On the other hand, the Mexicans represent the most recently immigrated population, with a presence of 37 million people in the U.S. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, around 1 million Mexicans had been deported from the U.S. against their will, although 85% of them were U.S. citizens. The massive immigration of Mexicans to the U.S. began in 1980, and they represent today the third largest ethnic group in the U.S. Another relatively large group with an interesting history is represented by the American Chinese, with a total population of 5 million people. The Chinese started arriving massively to the U.S. in the 19th century during the California Gold Rush. The immigration of the Chinese continued until 1882, when by the Chinese Exclusion Act, the U.S. banned their immigration. This ban was abolished only in 1943. Other large groups in the U.S. include Italians, French, Poles, Puerto Ricans, Norwegians, Swedes, Jews, Russians, and many others, whom we will talk about in one of our next videos. If you want to learn about your origins, then the best way is to do a DNA test with Ancestry DNA, the best test of this type. It will help you learn not only who your ancestors were and where they lived, but also discover the roots of their migration and their daily life. 10 million people have already done this test. You will find the link to the DNA test in the description. Thank you for staying with us till the end. If you like this video, support us with a like, and for more great content, subscribe to our channel.